Coming up on Nebraska Stories, hitting the trail for the Nacho Ride. The beauty of Mexican folk dance. Tour a 19th century Army outpost. A love letter from Willa Cather. A plague of locusts. An old windmill factory sparks back to life. And garden art on a giant scale.
All my life, I tried to promote physical activity and physical fitness. So being retired now, it's just in my blood to promote activity. Do you do it for the exercise? Do you do it for the socializing? Do you do it for the nachos?
All of the above.
I went on a bike ride in Mineola, Iowa, just on the other side of Council Bluffs. It was their 500th taco ride. They had a big turnout, I think almost 1,000 people. We just had a blast, and I thought, why don't we have a ride like this down in Lincoln? It can't be that hard to do. I've got 4 children at home, and they didn't think it would happen. And now they go, pretty cool what you've done, Dad. The ride started out with just 4 of us that committed. I took signs out and put them in bicycle shops, coffee shops. We typically average about 200 riders per night.
It's all about balance. You bike and then you stop and eat tacos, and so we're balanced, we're even. Yeah.
This is a social ride. This is all about meeting new people, making friends.
Hi.
This year, Dan has simplified the menu to kind of streamline it a little bit, offering nachos, of course, and tacos.
We used to run a pretty full menu, and now we just do tacos and nachos. I think the best night we did last year was 970 tacos and 260 orders of nachos, and that was in 3.5 hours. Today I made 90 pounds of hamburger just for the tacos alone. You order, we yell out your name, you come get it, and then they just sit down with people they don't even know. And by the time it's done, a bunch of friends were made, and you might see them 2 weeks later all riding together.
We were able to have a nice leisurely ride and have good conversation and
It was great.
really
and saw
talk
some
about,
wildlife.
We did. We saw a beautiful deer, and it was wonderful. It was a nice ride.
It is just a hodgepodge of people who ride, and it's really neat. This is a sport that can be enjoyed by everybody. You could do this in your neighborhood too. This isn't rocket science. Just get some people to ride in your neighborhood, commit to it. You could develop your own ride in your part of town.
Okay, you smile pretty when you turn, okay? My parents were wonderful dancers, but they didn't dance folklorico. My mother-in-law's the one that taught me. I was dating her son. I married her son. When I married him, I wasn't dancing at the time, but, you know, he said, you should join our group. My mom would love to teach you to dance. My daughter was here tonight watching her daughter in the lime green dress. She wants me to keep going. I think that's what made me be so driven to go into the workshops and learn more steps. Our children just love going to dance, just like the little 3-year-old. She started last year when she was 2, and she doesn't know all the steps, but she just jumps right in there and loves to get her skirt on and loves to come out and dance. That is a very good reason for me to keep going, because they know that it just brings joy to their hearts too, and it brings joy to me to see them on stage and to see them happy and glowing and smiling and be proud of who they are, and to showcase that each and every time they're on stage.
If you were an 1880s soldier looking for action, looking for excitement, this was not where you wanted to be stationed. Fort Hartsuff on the eastern edge of Nebraska's Sandhills.
They talk about how bored they were, that there really wasn't a whole lot going on other than like the drills on the parade ground.
Today, Fort Hartsuff is a state historical park, restored to the way it looked when it was an infantry post from 1874 to 1881. Aside from the boredom, it wasn't a bad place to live. Soldiers slept and worked more comfortably inside buildings with thick lime concrete walls, a material choice driven by the lack of trees around at the time. The commanding captain had his own house, while next door, framed by 2 ponderosa pines imported by the soldiers, is the elegant house shared by 2 other officers. The rest of the troops lived in barracks. At the time, a full company was 60 soldiers.
It was pretty rare to have a full company because the desertion rate was pretty high at that time. There was always somebody gone, somebody sick. So we look back at our records and we would have anywhere probably from 45 to 55 usually stationed here at a time.
And then like when they discovered gold in the Black Hills, then the desertion rate was up pretty good.
Enlisted men made about $13 a month, less than the civilian laundresses who lived on the grounds. Soldiers paid them to wash and mend their uniforms, a process that took several days. Laundress was a high turnover job, though.
Women were scarce out here, and a lot of times they'd get married and they'd be gone.
A hospital served soldiers and locals from the area. Typhoid fever killed one of the 3 soldiers who died while at Fort Hartsuff. Another was killed during a skirmish with Sioux warriors, the only significant battle for Hartsuff soldiers. 3 survivors were awarded the Medal of Honor. And the third death...
He drank a little too much that day and was pretty intoxicated, and the story goes that he got sick and was getting sick over that fence and got his neck between the pickets and supposedly hung himself, and the official thing on his tombstone was alcohol poisoning, but that's the story that happened.
The picket fence was more for keeping animals off the parade grounds than protecting the fort from attack. With a 97-foot pine flagpole in the middle, this is where soldiers spend a lot of their time, drilling and practicing maneuvers 2 or 3 times a day. Occasional social events help break the monotony.
They would hold a lot of balls here. They had a big Thanksgiving ball at Christmas time. The soldiers would put on skits and plays and melodramas and things like that whenever they could. And they would invite all the settlers in the area. So it made life a little more enjoyable for the soldiers and give the settlers, something to do too.
The fort was put here to protect these new settlers, but also protect local Pawnee Indians from their traditional enemy, the Sioux. By 1881, the Army decided it wasn't needed anymore. Fort Hartsuff was abandoned. Today, it serves a different, but still important purpose.
This is probably one of the most complete forts of this time period anywhere in the whole country.
It's just a great place, part of Nebraska history.
This gives the people of Nebraska a chance to step back in time and just see what it was really like at that time period.
April 28th, 1925. My dear Mr. Fitzgerald, I had read and hugely enjoyed your book before I got your letter, and I honestly had not thought of a lost lady when I read that passage to which you now call my attention.
In 1925, Willa Cather received a surprising letter from F. Scott Fitzgerald. His novel, The Great Gatsby, had just been published, and he was afraid he had unconsciously stolen his Daisy character from her heroine in A Lost Lady. Cather was famous by then, author of O Pioneers, The Song of the Lark, My Antonia, and she just won the Pulitzer Prize for a war novel. She assured Fitzgerald that he had nothing to worry about. It wasn't plagiarism. They were both responding to the same mysterious thing.
I suppose everybody who has ever been swept away by personal charm tries in some way to express his wonder that the effect is so much greater than the cause. And in the end, we all fall back upon an old device and write about the effect and not the lovely creature who produced it. After all, the only thing one can tell about beauty is just how hard one was hit by it. Isn't that so?
Cather was first hit by it many years before when she met a young woman named Louise Pound at the University of Nebraska.
1:30 p.m., June 15th, 1892, Lincoln. My dear Louise, I am just about halfway through a nasty job of packing, and the idea has suddenly occurred to me that after going up to your place tonight to see your new Worth costume, I did not give voice to my admiration. It rather overcame me. The general effect struck me so hard that I lost track of the incidentals. I find that I have 4 very distinct impressions left with me: the neck, the train, the color, and what the whole affair set off. I suppose you would object to my saying that you looked very handsome last night.
I think she had a very deep crush on Louise Pound, and that letter is one of the primary pieces of evidence that Cather loved women, that she was oriented toward loving other women, not loving men. And she also knew that society judged her, or would judge her, adversely for that. She said, it's so unfair that friendships between women should be labeled unnatural. So she knew what she was talking about.
I think that letter to Louise Pound it's really heartbreaking because you just feel it as an unrequited love. You can feel Louise's distance, or at least Cather's perception of her distance from her.
And I think lots of people have written letters like that. Most of us will never have them published. It's true. I certainly hope that the person to whom I addressed such letters in college didn't keep it.
This epistle is infinitely sillier than one I tore up last March and did not send you, but I am tired and just haven't physical energy enough to tear it, so you will have to pardon my frame of mind and lay it all to the weather. Yours, William.
Louise Pound became a famous athlete and the first woman president of the Modern Language Association. She stayed in Nebraska. Willa Cather pioneered her way east, from Lincoln to Pittsburgh to New York, finding friendship along the way with women who returned her affection.
It's an odd feeling to go inside the Kriegel Windmill Factory in Nebraska City. A giant belt-driven wheel shaft powers machinery that dates back to the Civil War. Tools are left on the work table. An overcoat still hangs in the office. The only sign that the shop has been closed for more than 2 decades is the coating of dust on everything. And there is everything to be found in this factory.
Even in the office, the jotted down pencil notes are still on the desk. It truly is as if the owners walked out the door and never came back.
T. Lindsay Baker is a windmill expert and a consultant for a nonprofit group hoping to turn this once thriving factory into a world-class museum.
The thing that makes the Kriegel factory important is that it is the only preserved original historic windmill factory that remains in the country.
What we need to do is get this bandsaw to go about a foot further.
Another consultant is John Bowditch, a specialist in turn-of-the-century industrial machines.
This is an amazing collection of machinery in here. That's one of the things that's special about the place.
Nebraska City industrialist George Kriegel began the business in 1879. He moved the factory to this simple prairie-style wood frame building on the main street of Nebraska City in 1903. His son Art eventually took over the family business. The Kriegel factory made each windmill one at a time, an estimated 2,000 during a 50-year period for regional customers. A few remain in operation today, like the windmill at the Silcox family farm just across the border in Iowa.
And I'm going to prime it now. It's sat all winter, and this is the first time we've had it running this year, so I'm going to fill this up. I remember as a kid, you could stand here and probably see 10 of these windmills just in this area. This windmill dates back, I think, late 20s. Our farm acquired it in '69. It was lying in a ditch, and we restored it. It's been a great functioning windmill ever since. We've had to do just very minor maintenance to it. And we have people stop all the time and look at it and take pictures of it quite often.
Organizers hope there will be a strong interest from the public in how the windmills were made at this small factory.
It's kind of a time capsule. The sheer volume of stuff in here in 1994 is almost incomprehensible. You know, they just used this little drift and this hammer and pounded the heck out of it.
These two experts first came to this factory 17 years ago.
It still seems cluttered, but you could imagine there was probably twice as much stuff in here at that time. These were string savers. The thing that struck me as much as anything else was the personalities of the people, particularly Art Kriegel towards the end of his life, come through in a kind of a very moving way in terms of the things that were important to them. And it's kind of a life capsule of them as much as it is anything else. That's what's unique.
What's also unusual is that the Kriegel family saved records from the founding of the company in the 1870s until the end of business 112 years later when Art Kriegel died. It's one of the oldest continuous sets of business records in Nebraska history.
There is a bit of the feeling that anything that came in here stayed here. And so part of the challenge was to try to determine when things came in. We're trying to interpret the building as being around 1939 when they ceased windmill production in this space.
The Kriegels switched from making windmills to repairing them when World War II led to a rationing of materials.
If the bandsaw is here, we may crowd things. I think this machine sticks way the heck out. We can always put it together and see, what it looks like.
So during a long couple of days, these two experts are playing detective and trying to put this puzzle back together the way the factory would have been back in its heyday.
Yeah, everything is sagged up here.
The building has settled, and the main shaft is out of alignment by more than an inch. Even the electricity poses a mystery. The wiring is old, and the fuses are tricky.
I'm just going to do this momentarily. That was a serious underwhelming. Oh, there we are.
Yeah, do it one more time. I thought I had one fluctuation here.
It's always fun to watch something come to life that hasn't run for a long time, and to know that you have the skills to be able to make something like this run. The thing about machinery is that motion is the soul of the machine. And if the public can see it run, they get a far better understanding of what it is and what its point was than if it's just sitting there.
Everything still works, but these machines have been replaced long ago by computerized modern systems.
Part of the problem is that industrial history tends to get thrown away. The person dies and they bring in an auctioneer and he sells off the machinery, and the good stuff goes to other shops and the bad stuff gets scrapped. So what's important about it is you have an entire labor system and an entire way of life preserved here that relates to what this town was, and in a sense is all about, that has survived largely intact with very little having happened to it. That's rare.
For John Bowditch, one of the most important tasks in putting together this museum is preserving the apparent disorder.
There essentially is no other place in the world like this. I mean, it is an absolutely unique spot. Because it's very easy to throw away the wrong piece of dirt, frankly. Dirt tells us a great deal about, for example, the types of chips that were under a particular machine. You really want that there because that gives you that sense of Mr. Kriegel having just walked out the door and shut the door.
By late June 1874, the crops were growing splendidly in spite of the drought. For months, the whole valley had been doing without meat, but each family felt sure that soon it would be gathering the golden grain which should buy food and clothing. Then, within the space of one July day, an unprecedented disaster literally descended on that entire section of Nebraska, so that every settler faced starvation. We were taking supper with a family we love so dearly. Suddenly, I saw the mother's face grow blank. She pointed to the northwest. As we all looked, we saw an immense cloud rising swiftly. Then we heard a roar and a rush. Grasshoppers, inconceivable millions of them. They instantly filled the air. Though the cloud itself passed slowly onward, the ground already was spread thickly with those living creatures, all eating. Instantly, they began to devour everything green except the buffalo grass. Any animal that could not live on that grass alone died soon. The pigs and the chickens, brought hopefully across hundreds of miles for fine breeding stock, had to die too. Men looked at each other in the face and grew pale. They could have fought bands of Cheyenne or Sioux, but these small insects, they could not fight. In no time at all, up and down the valley, those honest, brave, patient, hard-working men, women, and children were hungry, hopelessly hungry. Families that had been dragging along on a tiny ration of boiled wheat reached the end of that supply.
Watch our stories online at netnebraska.org/Nebraska Stories, and go to Facebook to like us and leave a comment. Join the Nebraska Stories conversation. Nebraska Stories is funded by the Margaret and Martha Thomas Foundation, the Nebraska Office of Highway Safety, Humanities Nebraska, the Nebraska Tourism Commission, and First Nebraska Bank. Sustained funding for arts coverage is provided by the H. Lee and Carol Gendler Charitable Fund, the Nebraska Arts Council, and Nebraska Cultural Endowment.